Let the record reflect we are back in session. Parties to the council are present. Members of our jury or alternates are present. Our witnesses back on the witness stand. And Ms. Rodriguez, you may continue your examination.
Thank you. I think when we left off, we were talking about the samples 3 and 4 that you had examined, and you indicated that you did some chemical examination on them, and that as a result of that chemical examination, you were able to exclude them. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when you interpret the test results from the chemical analysis that you do on paint samples, are there different levels of association?
Yes, in our laboratory we use an interpretation scale to give some context to the results that we report out.
So can you explain to us the different levels of association or what your findings can reveal with respect to a paint source?
So the most conclusive level that we would assign is a level 1, which is identification. That would be a fraction match or physical reconnection of 2 pieces of paint. You see that very commonly in a car, where a piece of paint pops off of a car, and then we get the car in evidence as well. We can actually physically put that piece of paint back into that hole that's in the paint on the car. There wasn't a possibility for that in this case because we weren't looking at a paint chip on the items went into the garment and the sledgehammer. They were a drip of paint and a smear of paint, so that conclusion could not have been reported out in this particular case based on the evidence that was received. The next level that we would report out would be a level 2, which means there are unusual features that are present in the paint that make it more than the most common type of association we can make. In other words, sometimes we'll see a car that has house paint painted on it as a repair. That's not something that we done at the factory where it was made. That's not something that we done at a repair shop. That's something that a consumer has done to their car. So if we were to find a paint chip from a car that had house paint on it, and we were able to not physically put it back into place on the car, but we could do all of the physical and chemical testing that we normally do and not find any differences, we would say, well, we can't exclude that car, but we could, of course, include any other car that doesn't also have that house paint on it. So it's got unusual features that make that association stronger than any other car out on the road that would look the same. The next level of association we have is a level 3. That means that we have been able to do all the testing that we could do on the paint that we're comparing, both physical testing, looking at it under a microscope, looking at all the different layers, as well as all the chemical testing that we do, and we can't find any differences. What we would conclude with a level 3 is that those 2 paints cannot be differentiated, and therefore they could have come from the same source or any other source that looks exactly like that. So in this case, that would mean that the paints either came from the same can of paint, but there are other cans of paint that could look exactly the same, or the paint came from the paint that we're comparing to a vehicle came from that vehicle, or any other vehicle that's painted exactly that way. Okay, so it's still a strong association because there are a lot of differences that are out there, but it means that we are acknowledging that it's not unique. It's not a one-to-one like a fracture match would be. The next level would be a level 4. That means that perhaps we can't do all the testing that we would normally do. For example, the paint, either we don't have enough of it or it's contaminated. There's some limitation that we have in the testing that we do, and therefore we're acknowledging that since we can't do all the testing, maybe we could discriminate these paints if we could do all the testing. But since we can't make that assumption that they are indistinguishable or unable to be differentiated. And then the next level we have in the scale means that there are other inconsistencies that might happen. Say we can't do all the testing, and maybe some of the testing is indicating that we can't see differences, but some of the testing might be indicating we can see some differences. So we feel that there's enough commonality to not differentiate the paints, but there's something in the data that tells us we can't, we don't have as much confidence in saying that we can't discriminate them. And then we have an inconclusive, and that means that we really do have things in common in the paint, but also differences that we acknowledge that are there as well. And we just can't say one way or the other whether that is something that can be discriminated or not based on those differences. And then we have elimination, the strongest non-association we have, which means there are differences that we can see and repeat in our testing that show us that these two paints could not come from the same source. And of course, the perfect example would be there's a red paint and a blue paint, something like that. It could be physically that different, or it could be one is a house paint, one's a car paint, so they can be told apart. They couldn't come from the same source, or it could be something in the chemistry of the data itself, where one's made of one component, one's made of another, and everyone can tell them apart.
Do you need to get some water?
I have some.
Okay. So, in essence, when you indicated to us that you had tested items 3 and 4 against items 1 and 2, would it be fair to say then that items 3 and 4 were eliminated? Is that what you would refer to it?
Yes, because there were chemical differences between 3 and 4 as compared to 1 and 2.
Now, items 1 and 2, which were the paint scraping from the bra and the paint scraping from the sledgehammer, did you do chemical testing on those?
Yes, because to that point I could not discriminate them or tell them apart chemically or physically. I went further in my chemical testing.
And can you just tell us briefly what testing you did on those?
The next test I did is abbreviated as S as in Sam, E as in Edward, M as in Mary, hyphen, E as in Edward, D as in David, S as in Sam. And that stands for scanning, electron, microscopy, energy, dispersive, X-ray, spectroscopy. And that basically is a test that we use where we have a beam of electrons hitting the sample and looking at the elements that are present in the paint. So for example, earlier in my testimony I referred to a pigment that's common in paint, titanium dioxide. That's made of titanium and oxygen. Using this other test, SEM, we can analyze the paint and determine if the titanium and the oxygen are present there, which would confirm what we saw in the previous test, the FTIR test, that allowed us to think that titanium dioxide was there. So this is it's a confirmation of some of the information we already have, but it also might give us other information. So something that we wouldn't be able to see with the first test, perhaps we can see with this test in terms of the elements that are present to help us determine what other pigments might be present in the paint. And in doing that test, I still see no differences in the elements that were present in item 1 versus item 2. I didn't test items 3 and 4 this way because I already said that they could not come from the same source. They'd been eliminated with the first test.
Did you do any other chemical testing to items 1 and 2 to determine their level of association with each other?
Yes, just as the SEM test confirmed some of the information I had for the first test, the FTIR, I have another test that I do, which is the last test that we do on the paint, to try and see if we can see any differences. And that test is abbreviated as PY-GC/MS. And that stands for pyrolysis, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. That test allows me to confirm what the backbone or the basis of the paint is. So for example, I said earlier, house paints can be oil-based, or they can be acrylics. This test allows me to confirm that, and also to determine what type of acrylic it might be. So for example, crazy glue is a type of acrylic. Car paint is a type of acrylic. House paint can be a combination of acrylic paints. And this test allows me to determine which acrylics might be present in the paint. So you might have two paints that are both, even it may say on the can, in a house paint, 100% acrylic. But that doesn't mean it's 100% one kind of acrylic. So this allows me to determine both of these acrylic paints that I can test with FTIR and say, yep, they're both acrylic paints. This allows me to determine, are they the same acrylics? Is one a combination? Is one 100% kind of acrylic? Etc. And in doing that test, I still saw no differences between items 1 and items 2.
So after running all of the chemical examinations that you could, did you reach an opinion as to the level of association between items 1 and 2.
Yes, I did.
And what is that opinion?
My report reads that those items 1 and 2, could not be differentiated, and therefore they could have originated from the same source. And I gave that a level 3 association. What that means is that in all the testing that I did, I could not tell the paints apart. However, I know that there are other paints that could be manufactured that could also be present in the marketplace that could also have those same chemical components to it. So I couldn't tell these apart. I could tell them apart from other paints, but there are other paints out there also that might have the same chemical composition that also would look the same physically and chemically.
But based upon all the tests that you ran, they were consistent with each other?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also, in October, receive another paint sample?
In October 2014?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, I did.
And
Sorry, okay. Yes. All right, you may proceed, Mr. Merritt.
thank you. Now, you just testified in October of 2014, you received another sample, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll refer to that as item 17. Do you recall where that item was taken from?
That item was reported to me as being taken from the victim's residence, from the kitchen in an island in the kitchen.
And what were you asked to do with respect to that sample that you received, item 17?
I was asked to compare that sample to the items 1 and 2 that I had originally reported on.
Okay, can you tell us what testing you did with respect to item 17?
So that testing began the same as what I earlier testified to with 1 and 2. I looked at the item visually, and I looked at it under a microscope, determined how many layers of paint there were more than 1 layer paint there, and then looked at those layers in comparison visually to items 1 and 2. And then the item 17 had a top layer that was a different color from the layers, the paint that I could see on items 1 and 2, but it had an under layer that was close enough in an off-white color that I compared that to items 1 and 2 visually, microscopically, so looking at it under the microscope, and then when I went out to chemical testing with the item as well.
And what were your conclusions after you did the chemical testing?
My overall conclusion was that it was inconclusive because I ran each of the tests that I had run on items 1 and 2, and in each of the tests there was enough consistency or enough absence of differences for me to think that they could be the same, but there were minor differences in 2 of the chemical tests that I did that allowed me to not really feel that I could conclude conclusively that it could have come from that same paint source or that it didn't come from that paint source. So I left it as an inconclusive. There were a lot of commonalities between the paint, that item 17 from the house and item 22, but there were differences that were present that I couldn't account for. I couldn't explain away as, oh, the sample's contaminated or something like that. And so I left it as an inconclusive.
So if I understand you correctly, there was a number of similarities between items 1 and 2, which you had already decided were similar enough with respect to item 17. When you compared them, there were similarities. Is that correct?
Yes, and they were similarities you can expect to see in paints. They were acrylic, they were common pigments. The differences were subtle differences.
So were there enough commonalities between the samples that you were looking at that you attempted to reach out to other people within your field to see if you could determine what exactly was causing, some of the differences between them?
Yes, I did. I emailed people within the paint industry because they're the ones who formulate the paint and they would have a better understanding of all of the ingredients that go into the paint. And I explained to them the differences I was seeing and where I was seeing them chemically in the data. These were chemists I was speaking to in the paint industry. And saying to them, I think that this could be a true difference. For these reasons, I think this could be possibly an unaccountable difference based on environmental factors and things. what do you think? And they agreed with me that there was really no way to tease out that information further. There was no additional testing I could do that would conclusively allow me to say, this is a difference, where this is not a true difference in how the paint was made, the formulation of the paint, as opposed to what the paint was exposed to after it was applied to, formulated and applied to the surfaces where it was.
Based upon your background, training, and experience, as well as the conversations that you had with other experts in the field, were there a couple of things that you observed or that you learned that might account for the differences between the two samples?
Yes and no. So I guess I'm not sure what you're asking specifically.
Sure. Did you talk to anybody specifically about whether or not the environment can play a role in causing the differences that you observed between the two paint samples?
Yes, because I knew that the paint samples I was going to were found outside, I thought that there could be some environmental effects that could have happened to the paint that could cause some of the differences I was seeing. And the paint industry agreed with me that they did. Because the paint was done in the house, was in the kitchen, and people clean their kitchens sometimes, there's a greater chance that you can have things spill or oils or things from cooking in a kitchen, so there could be cleaners that you would use on paint in the kitchen that you might not use in paint in other places. And those chemicals, those surfactants, could be something that would then, surfactants or cleaners are in paint, and then they can also be used on paint. And there was no way to really figure out which would be the case on the paint in the kitchen. So,
Your Honor, I would object as to speculation on that part without further information where the paint chip was taken from, or if that could be possibly an explanation.
Overruled.
So, based on my communications with the paint industry, they agree that the environmental contamination from the locations where these paints were found, and I did not give information about where they were found, I just said outside or inside with cleaning supplies. They said those were all viable possibilities as to why the differences were there, but there was no way to further test to determine definitively if that was the case.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, there was enough similarities between the two, but based upon your research into that, the environment or cleaning supplies can have an impact on the samples that you observed.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Close.
Yes. So, Ms. Wright or Dr. Wright?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay. You work for the FBI, right?
I'm an examiner in the FBI laboratory, that's correct.
And you've done so, it appears to be 20 years.
I've been there 21 years.
And during that 21-year time, you were assigned to as you described as a specialized unit?
I'm in one of the units in the laboratory known as the chemistry unit.
Now, so in the FBI, when they have examination parts within there, they also break it down into different units. Is that kind of how it works?
So, yes, different specialties are grouped together within the laboratory.
And so there could be a chemistry one, there could be physics, whatever, firearms analysis, whatever it is, right? It's all kind of broken down.
Yes.
And when you're within that unit, you have to go through certain training to become a member of that unit.
Objection vague.
Overruled.
So, you're assigned to a unit and then you receive training within that unit to do the work that is part of that unit.
Right. So you would take numerous courses on the subject in the unit that you're assigned to cover, correct? So like if you're going to do chemistry analysis for paint, you're going to go through a lot of courses that show you this is what to look for in paint chemistry analysis. These are the different aspects of the field that you need to learn and get developed on to form an opinion.
Yes, that's correct.
And you went through numerous such trainings, correct?
Yes, I did.
I mean, I looked through your resume, your CV, and is this everything you went through or just the most recent?
So with respect to the training, it is some of the initial training as well as some of the most recent. But the other things, the publications, are the most recent.
And it seems like just about every year, almost every year, you went to some training or something so you get recertified, correct?
No, the FBI laboratory, assuming you're speaking about within my job, the FBI laboratory qualifies you to become an examiner at one time. And then the way that we maintain our proficiency or demonstrate we maintain our proficiency is to take a test every year, an independent test every year. That's not on my CV, that's something that's required of me as part of my job.
So the FBI, for you to be an expert in chemistry, paint analysis, you have to go through a proficiency exam every year.
Well, it's not just the FBI, we're an accredited laboratory, and it's part of the accreditation requirements that all examiners undergo proficiency testing on an annual basis.
And then every 5 years, you have another requirement to be board certified. I missed what that was.
So, separate and apart from my qualifications within the FBI laboratory, I took it upon myself to maintain, to seek and now maintain board certification, which some forensic examiners do. It's sort of like the way doctors do board certification. This is now for the forensic field. So I independently am board certified by the American Board of Criminalistics. It's not required by the FBI. They're obviously not opposed to it, but it's not required. It's just something that I do. And in order to have that additional certification, I have to prove and demonstrate keeping up with my field of study, with going to workshops, going to meetings, professional meetings, presenting at those meetings, taking training at those meetings, etc.
And these professional meetings, those are done, are attended by individuals not only in your field as a scientist, but also the scientists, the producers of the object you're, like the paint you're going to analyze. Would that be accurate?
Some of the meetings, yes.
And so if you go to a meeting, there's a scientist that works for like Best Bar or something. They say, these are the techniques we're using to develop paint. This is what the items you can look for from a chemical kind of basis. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's one way that I can gain that information, yes.
And you establish contacts by doing that so you can contact them later if you have questions, as you did in this case, correct?
That's correct.
And you've done that over a 20-year period, the same type of analysis and assignment. Would that be accurate?
So are you asking me if our techniques are the same?
No, just you've generally been in the same unit analyzing the same thing. An expert in paint and tape.
I've been an expert in paint and tape with the FBI Lab since 2002.
And based on that expertise, you testified, is this correct, 21 times in the state, and in different ways in federal 3 times, and then a couple times in international.
That sounds correct. I have to look at my CV to answer that definitively.
Based on all this qualifications, you're considered an expert in the FBI, is that fair to say?
The FBI has deemed me qualified to conduct these exams. That's correct.
Now, as part of your report, I noticed you mentioned that you're comparing paint scrapings from a drop of a bra and paint scrapings from the drop of a wrench. Remember that part of your report?
That's where the paint was taken from that I analyzed, yes.
I'm going to show you what's marked exhibit.
Do we object to the misstates the testimony in terms of the item that was tested?
I think it was previously referenced as a sledgehammer unless there's a different item.
No, in her report she called it a wrench.
I see sledgehammer.
Well, in her report she called it a wrench. But I just want to show you, it's an actual sledgehammer. I want to show you 745 and 746. You haven't actually seen the items, correct?
Saw when I tested them.
You saw the actual items or you saw scrapings from it?
I saw scrapings from the items.
So this is an item that's the sledgehammer that the scrapings came from that you tested for one of the 2 items. And this is the bra. The bra is more important to me. Since you are an expert on paint. They described the paint on the bra in the report submitted to you as a drop on the bra. Looking at 746A, would you consider that just a drop?
Objection, argumentative, calls for speculation.
You want me to say this is a drop of paint?
How would you describe that paint on the bra before you in 746A?
I would describe it as paint.
Would it be more than a drop?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
Depending on how much was splashed onto it, it could be one drop. It's paint on the bra.
Is that, because you talked about based on your analysis of that item, that the paint went onto that item and likely cured by air.
Objection, speculation,
Overruled.
foundation.
Overruled, she can answer if she has an opinion on
What, did you repeat the question?
In your report, you talked about how the paint scraping that you analyzed, it appeared to be paint that was on that item and cured by air.
I would agree with that.
Well, what does that mean when you put in your report that it cured by air?
What I mean is that I believe that this paint was wet when it was dropped onto the bra, and then it dried in place through the air, like paint does, house paint does. And I believe that that's how it got on here. It's dropped on and then dried.
Now, the other paint that was scraped off from the hammer, how did you describe, you think that got put onto that one? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
Looking at the amount of paint on that bra, does that seem to be sufficient amount of paint if it wasn't dry, when it came in contact with something else, it could transfer just by touch?
Objection calls for speculation.
that. Overruled, she can answer if she has an opinion.
This paint has what looks like drops going down, so that's partly why I think it would be liquid when it dried on here, because it's got gravity pulling it down. So I think that this was put on here wet, and then it dried in place.
And if something else, say the hammer came in contact with the bra, when it's still wet, would that be allowed to transfer onto the hammer?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled, she can answer if she has an opinion.
If paint is wet and something else touches it, yes, I think it can transfer.
And that can be from direct transfer, or me touching something that's wet and then touching something else when my hand's still wet with that, correct?
Depending on how much paint would be on your hands, yes.
And do you see any paint on the handle of that sledgehammer that would be consistent with what you tested? If you could take a look and see.
Object as to speculation and foundation.
Let's see, is it-
Overruled, she can look at it and see if she has an opinion.
So I have pictures of these items in my notes that I was using as well.
Do you have those notes with you?
Those notes were provided in discovery.
No, but do you have them with you? In case you need them for reference, because I have them.
I have a copy of my notes.
Okay. If you need to return to your notes to help kind of refresh your memory, maybe where it came from, please. do it.
So, I'm sorry, what do you want me to do with this?
See if you can find where the paint would have transferred to your hammer.
Can we open it?
No. We cannot, unfortunately.
And that would be difficult because I would need to open it, move it around, and stick it under my microscope.
I understand. If you just say you can't based on the limitations, that's a lot rather than you opening that bag. Because I don't think we're allowed to open it. Unless the court wants to entertain the witness.
Is there any evidence of blood on the hammer?
Not, my understanding is there was no blood found on it, but that does not mean it's not there. I don't know, so.
If you're comfortable taking it out and examining it, you can do so.
I don't think I need to, Your Honor. I think I see the area that I remember from my photographs.
Okay.
I see some white material in that area.
Looking at that area, can you, in your experience, draw any kind of inferences of how, if it was dropped on there or transferred onto that by touch? Does anything about what you're looking at allow you to state any kind of opinion?
No, because this is not how the condition it was in when it was dropped on there, so it's been sampled.
That's what I wanted you to make sure you saw it, to see if you could opine. Thank you. Is it fair to say the amount of paint on this bra is a level that would maybe saturate the bra?
Objection calls for speculation as the ability to saturate.
Overruled, she can answer, she has an opinion.
I don't have an opinion about what would saturate a rock.
Do you have an opinion, how long do you think this kind of paint, this amount of paint would take to dry?
No, I don't.
You mean, would it be minutes or?
It would depend upon a lot of factors, conditions that it was in. I have no idea.
So it could be seconds, it could be hours, depending on multiple factors.
I really can't state an opinion on it.
So not only when you were looking at item 17 and comparing it to items 1 and 2, did you contact other experts in the field, the producers? You looked at a library as well?
We have an internal library on our instrument.
Just explain to the jury what the things you would look at.
So in looking at the paint, we have an internal library that we created. We did a study of architectural paints and house paints where we looked at 960 different paints. And we put those into a storage library within our instrument so that if we had an unknown sample, we could run it against all these known house paints and see if we could determine, does this look like a house paint? What type of paint might it be? Not what type of paint would it be in terms of a brand, but in terms of a chemical composition. Is it an oil-based paint or an acrylic paint? Those kinds of things.
So the FBI keeps a historical data reserve, so if you have some future investigation, you can go back and look at other information.
Well, this particular library that I'm referring to was based on research that we did. It wasn't based on other casework. It was based on research that we did. We collected paints from all over the country and analyzed those and reported on those. We published paper on those.
And then after you did the test between items 1, 2, 3, and 4, you wrote a report, correct?
That's correct.
And it was a written report that you put together detailing your findings.
That's correct.
And then you submitted that report, well, instead of telling you what it is, I'm going to show you a case records report. If you can tell me what this is.
Counsel, what page are you looking at?
You know, it's not marked, the back part of it. And there's this part of your report that's attached to the back.
This is not part of my report. This is part of our internal notes, my case file notes.
Okay, and what does this show?
It shows the information from our laboratory information management system, our electronic case file system, which says when the evidence is received into the lab, into the unit. That particular page, if I recall, it also shows who reviewed my report. So when I put it into that system as a written document, and then when it was reviewed.
So what you're saying is, in the FBI, when you do an analysis and you write a report, you're required to write a written report, correct?
That's correct.
And then you're required to have that report subject to peer review within that unit.
Technical review is required by someone who's also qualified in the same discipline, and then we have the administrative review by a supervisor as well. So 2 reviews happen before the FBI releases a report.
And that's required as part of your protocol.
Yes, all FBI reports are both technically and administratively reviewed before they're released.
And then when you wrote your second report, the comparison for item 17, you did the exact same thing, correct?
That's correct.
And all that's current protocol.
That's correct.
And your findings on items 1 and 2 were that they are level 3 associations.
That's right, meaning there are no differences between them. So they could have come from the same source or another source that also has the same chemical composition.
But they're not a match. They're not a physical.
Objection,
They're not a
mistakes
physical.
testimony.
Overruled, she can answer.
They're not a physical match.
The only physical match we identify is an actual fracture match, and that was not possible with these items.
So if it was a physical match would be a transfer to, like, how would you use it? Like if a car hits another car or something like that, you have the paint from one car to another, is that where you see the
No, where you can see those would be, as I described earlier, in testimony where if you had a piece of paint pop off of the car, and you would then have the car available as well, and you could physically put that piece of paint back into that paint system where there's a hole that it fits right into.
So is it by chemical analysis or putting a puzzle back together?
It's putting a puzzle back together, but all the layers of that puzzle, if the paint is multi-layered. So looking at the surface, but also looking at all the underlying layers as well.
And so since the paint between items 1 and 2 were probably transferred when they were wet, it's impossible to have that level of association assigned. Is that the accurate?
Objection, speculation.
Oh, rule, she can,
I don't know what you mean by transferred when they were wet. Do you mean to each other?
If they were transferred to each other, yeah.
Objection, speculation.
sustain.
There's no evidence for you to show, or that shows that then that the paint was from the bra that was on the sledgehammer were from the same exact event.
Objection,
Like they were not shared.
speculation.
Oh, rule, she can answer if she has an opinion.
My conclusion wasn't based on a physical match. My conclusion is based on a comparison of the properties, the physical and chemical properties of those paints, each of them to items 3 and 4 and 17 and to each other. And my conclusion is that items 1 and 2 cannot be differentiated based on the physical and chemical properties, and therefore they could have come from the same source or another source that would have all the same physical and chemical properties.
So they could have been from 2 separate cans of paint manufactured in the same way at the same time.
That's correct.
That's level.
That's level 3 in this particular case, yes.
And then for item 17, you said it's just inconclusive.
It's inconclusive whether items 1 or 2 or both originated from the same source as item 17.
So it would be improper for you to make any argument of comparison or association between 1 and 2 and 17, correct?
No, I can make an argument for where they're the same, but I can also make an argument where I see differences between them, subtle differences between them. And that's why it's inconclusive, because I have the big picture that is consistent, which allows me to keep it in the testing. But then I have small differences, subtle differences, minor differences in the data that I can't explain. And so I can't rule it out, but I can't rule it in, if you will.
So if you can't rule it out, you can't rule it in, it's inconclusive, right?
That's correct.
So you can't assign an association level to it.
Well, I did. The association level isn't inconclusive. It's part of the whole student scale.
I just mean 1 through 5.
Right. It's not, 1 through 5 would be an identification or a class association. I can't do that with these.
So you have 5 levels of inclusion or association, but only 1 level for inconclusive. So there's no ranking between inconclusive, right?
No, there's not.
And if it's just eliminated, that's like items 1, 2, and 3, and 4. They're not the same color. It's pretty obvious.
Objection, misstates testimony.
Oh, rule, she can answer.
1 and 2 were eliminated as coming from the same source as 3 or 4. So that means they're completely different. They could not have come from the same paint can because they're different formulations.
And they're different colors. You knew that right from the beginning.
Well, I knew the colors were different, but they were different in terms of an off-white versus a white. And because we had environmental issues to contend with, I wanted to do the chemical analysis to confirm what I was seeing visually.
And you called it a beige tan, correct?
One of them I did, yes.
And when you were looking at the scrapings from item 1, which is the sledgehammer, some of the scrapings had multiple layers that you had to, I guess, disregard and look for a single layer temp. That sound right?
So those scrapings contained what looked to be some black material, which then looking at the pictures looked to be possibly part of the label on the tool.
Then you had another one that was 2-layered, or excuse me, no, 2 layers. One was yellow, and then one was the off-white too as well.
We're still talking about the sledgehammer?
Yes.
Yes. And then looking at the pictures, that made sense to me because I could see where some of the yellow had been pulled up in the picture as part of the scrapings that were taken from that item.
And you said, just so the language is clear, you described item number 1 on the sledgehammer as a clean, cured drops, not cured material transferred as solid.
Sorry, can you repeat it all again?
You said clean, cured drops, not cured material transferred as solid.
Yes.
What does all that mean?
So what that meant to me was, it was something that looked like it had been wet applied, or it dropped wet and then cured in place, as opposed to something that was already dry and broke off.
So like a car running into something with dry paint.
Right, or even you know, when you don't clean the handle on the paintbrush and then the paint dries on there and then you can pull it off, especially a house paint that's more elastic. So it didn't look like it had been pulled off and then cemented. It looked like it had been dried in place and then it was wet, dried in place, and then came off.
So it's transferred onto that. However it got there, wet.
Yes.
Anything on regret?
Yes, just briefly. There were some questions asked of you with regards to a wrench. Do you recall that?
From the testimony? From these questions?
From his questions?
Yes.
I'm going to show you your report from September 8th and October 20th. And we see, do you see item 1 there?
Yes.
And what is it referred to in your report as?
A sledgehammer.
And again, in your next report, what is item 1 referred to as?
It's a sledgehammer.
And so if somewhere you referred to it potentially as a wrench in a communication, would that have been an error?
Yes. I didn't have the item with me, so it was just...
So everything you've testified about today with respect to item 1 is a sledgehammer, right?
The scrapings from that item, yes.
Okay. You didn't have the actual sledgehammer and bra with you, is that right?
I did not have them in the lab, no.
Okay, so you got a picture of it along with the paint sample, would that be correct?
No, I got the pictures after the fact.
Okay, so when you did the first tests that you had, did you have the pictures with you?
The first test I had would have been visual, so I probably would have looked at the evidence, started to make notes, and then I believe then I asked for the images to see where the paint, what it looked like in place on the items.
Okay, and the picture that you received of the sledgehammer, do you know when that picture was taken?
I do not.
So you can't tell us as you sit here today whether or not that picture, there was any other tests or anything done that would have changed the composition of that picture that you received, is that correct?
So, are you asking me if the pictures were taken before or after the item was sampled to be sent in to me?
Correct.
I'd have to look at my notes to see. I could probably tell from my notes.
Okay, if that would refresh your recollection.
Do you want me to pull out my copy of my notes, or do you want to?
You can pull yours.
Okay, this picture shows more paint on it than what I was just shown today. So this picture was taken before, in my opinion, before the item was sampled.
And you cannot, as you sit here today and testify, tell us whether there was transfer between the bra and the sledgehammer, is that correct?
I cannot.
And your testimony is based, with respect to items 1 and 2, is that they have the same physical and chemical composition, is that correct?
That's correct.
And with respect to item 17, if I understood you correctly, they share, item 17 being the sample that was taken from the island, they share some of the same characteristics or composition, would that be correct?
They share the main composition, so the backbone of the paint, if you will. They share a lot of commonality. There are subtle differences between them that makes it inclusive.
Now you mentioned something about environmental factors potentially changing the composition to a certain degree.
They could.
How?
This is asked and answered and outside the limit of cross, or scope of cross.
Overruled.
how could environmental factors actually change the composition of the sample?
So, staying within my area of expertise, meaning someone analyzes paint, not formulates paint, I would say that differences could be that paint outside of the environment could have some environmental contamination that would change the composition. We try and account for that when we are sampling. We try and take an air sample of the paint, so we're not dealing with any environmental issues. But I don't know what sort of environmental exposure the paint had, particularly if it was wet when it was exposed to the environment. Then I don't know what could have become entrained within it, but I wouldn't necessarily know. It was not part of the original formulation. And then with respect to cleaning, chemicals and cleaning things, I don't have enough expertise in what sort of exchange could happen between the paint and the cleaning materials. In other words, whether the cleaning materials would actively, physically alter the chemistry of the paint. Sometimes that's supposed to happen. For example, there are exterior paints that are white that look brighter and whiter when you clean them because you're actually rubbing off some of that pigment. You're taking the surface off, so that's why it looks brighter. And that's supposed to happen with some paints. So there's a variety of changes that can happen environmentally, some which are manufactured to happen, and some which can just be happenstance.
I have no further questions.
Anything else? Am I correct in assuming you were never given any actual cans of paint or paint to compare to items 22?
I was not. You're right. That's correct.
Were you ever advised of what paint was found at the residence?
The only thing I know from the residence is the actual items I received is scrapings.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Any objection to Ms. Wright being excused?
No.
No. Thank you for your attendance and your excuse. And are we ready to call your next witness? Why don't we go ahead and take our afternoon recess, this time 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case. We'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes. Our jurors are not present. Counsel indicated you have something you wanted to discuss before the next witness is called?
Yes, Your Honor, there is two issues. We were informed today that people intended to call Detective Schrader. We were told Schrader was on Thursday. He was a computer expert. We had our computer experts slated to come here to watch that testimony, and they said they were available. They were going to come from LA County to see that. They're not available today. So we would object to them changing the scheduling based on us having our expert calendar to come watch their testimony. The second one is we were informed at lunchtime that they were going to call Detective Smith, which they have not previously alerted us to. My understanding is he's going to testify something in respect to the Mr. Merritt's truck in the video. He never wrote a report about any of this kind of discussion. I don't know to what context he's going to talk about. He's going to talk about the measurements that were done. He wasn't present for that. Those were different detectives. If he's going to talk about whether or not Mr. Merritt's truck is actually on the video, he has no expertise in that. I've seen no foundation for that. If he wants to offer a lay opinion, the evidence code is not allowed for lay testimony as to testify as whether or not his truck is on that video. We have, as a defense, have retained a expert on video analysis, to which we provided the reports to which they did write. He wrote his opinion. He told us about what to do with that information. If they're going to call now a new witness that has never written a report, we don't know what they're going to say. That would be improper discovery or lack of discovery without notice, and we would object to them calling this witness for any of that purpose.
Okay, I need to address a whole bunch of misrepresentations. First of all, we gave them a schedule almost a week in advance of roughly when these witnesses would be called. The fact that several of the witnesses today went a little faster than anticipated, we scrambled to fill the court's afternoon by having Detective Schrader come in early. We gave them that notice this morning. It was not predicated upon them telling us that their expert was coming in on Thursday, because we did not know that At least I did not know that when I asked to reschedule Schrader for this afternoon so we didn't go dark half a day. So that misrepresentation needs to be retracted because we were not informed, at least I was not informed that when I made the executive decision to fill the court's calendar so we didn't waste a day. Second of all, the discovery we were provided for their video person does not include a report. It includes some videos, it includes some still images, and a CV. So there has been no discovery provided from the defense as of that. Third, his misrepresentation as to the purposes of calling Detective Smith are perverted in this sense from fact. He was going to be called for his eyewitnessing of the processing of the defendant's truck, how they found the defendant's truck, got possession of it, and processed it. Where this whole comparison of a video and that it's in the video, I don't know where he's making that stuff up from. So, moving on, the representations to this court need to be a little more accurate because they're attempting to portray the people in a bad light with malintent and violating discovery rules when those aren't the case. And the continued accusations of failure to provide discovery, such as the one at sidebar regarding Miss Diana Wright, will not be tolerated anymore, and we will start having hearings on these accusations because they are veiled accusations of misconduct. So the court is now aware of the true lay of the land. Further, there is no legal right to postpone a prosecution witness so that they can have their expert here. They have a legal right to have their expert here to observe testimony of a prosecution witness, yes. They've been given notice, they should be prepared. Things happen in trial, such as witnesses go long, witnesses go short, and rescheduling happens. But there is no legal authority for postponing a prosecution's witness and wasting this jury's time and this court's time for the convenience of their witness. And I will add, as everyone knows in this case, he can watch it live online or he can watch it on YouTube tomorrow morning. So he can observe that testimony. So thanks to the court's order allowing the live stream. So that resolves that issue and there is no prejudice there.
So which witness do you intend to call first?
Well, I could call, well, we could flip a coin for you, Your Honor, because they're both here. Mr. Ryan, Sergeant Ryan is going to be fairly short. He's going to show pictures of the defendant's truck, the measurements that were taken, his presence during the processing. That really was it, just to connect that dot in the progress.
Okay, and did he do a report or did someone do a report on that?
There is reports about the processing of the vehicle. I don't believe it's authored in his name, but he was there and observed the truck, knows the history of how it was obtained and where it came from. So while each particular page may not be in his particular name, he was present.
Okay, any problem?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan's telling me that some of them are in his name.
Any problem with that, Mr. Rizzi?
No.
Okay.
Because I was informed by my colleague that there was different testimony, and I can hear my colleague informed them. I told Mr. McGee something that he misunderstood what the testimony was. In regard to the sidebar about the discovery violation, I didn't argue for a discovery violation. I didn't say there was. I'm not sure if I received that.
I understand. I didn't take that as you claiming that they did not give you discovery. You indicated you don't recall seeing it once they indicated they had it. It was a problem, so I didn't see that as an accusation of a discovery violation.
I do want to point out, we are still waiting for the witness list with the addresses. We tried to contact some of the witnesses that they have subpoenaed or as their potential witnesses of the number that they gave us. The addresses in the police reports are not accurate. So we are still waiting for the witness list that we're entitled to, that have the updated, most recent contact information they have for those people, so we can contact them.
Then obviously we weren't aware of outdated information either, and they haven't even made an informal request going, hey, we tried this address or phone number, it's not good, can you check into it for me? That would have been the courteous thing to do.
The law requires the people to give a witness list with addresses 30 days before trial. They haven't done that yet. There's no requirement that the defense give an informal request for them.
Well, they indicated that they did provide information, and they're saying the information that was provided is no longer accurate information.
The only information they provide is they look in the police reports that were written in 2010.
If
Or
Mr. McGee can clarify
2013.
who he's looking for, we can provide him the most accurate information that we have.
We're asking for information on everybody. The most updated information they have is they're required to do.
Okay,
And just also on the lines of discovery, we received more discovery this week of reports that they're writing now, that investigations they started after testimony started. And Mr. Gerard, who's back here today, has been writing in 402 that we're going to have the court address for exclusion of witnesses that the people want to call, that they did not get involved in this case until after opening statements. So we're going to address that at a later date. We just want to let the court know.
okay. Well, then you're going way beyond the issue of the next two witnesses.
Yes.
And it's certainly not uncommon for continuing the investigation to occur during the trial, so.
The court can make that determination once they hear what witnesses they are
Sure.
and what they're based on.
Sure.
But that will be coming.
Okay,
Further
so-
speculation on it.
So with regard to,
And Your Honor, can we please admonish prosecution, any more negative comments like that? And I'm going to start asking for sanctions. Because his unprofessionalism has been the highest I've ever seen.
well, the unprofessional conduct, I think, is equal on both sides. The level of speaking objections, the level of arguments with objections, the disrespect to the court in the arguments on both sides is, I think, at least unparalleled in my 33 years. And I am trying to exercise patience and not starting to cite counsel for misconduct and be exceptionally critical of counsel in front of the jury. But my patience is wearing thin, as you can tell from some of my comments in some of the arguments and on your objections. So I think both counsel would be well advised to understand if you have an objection on legal grounds, you can state the legal grounds. I will rule on it. If you feel it's something that you must be heard on, you could request to approach. I may or may not grant that. But continuing argument, particularly when it relates to disputed evidence on an objection in front of the jury, is unprofessional and improper. So, with regard to the one witness who's going to be talking about processing of the defendant's vehicle and various measurements, we can proceed with that. The second witness is who?
Detective Schroeder, he simply did the dump of the computers.
Correct.
Okay, and is there a report on that?
Yes?
Several.
Several disks were.
Oh, but that's the one you wanted your expert here for.
If he's just going to testify saying, I dumped all the information, I don't see if that's an issue. If he's going to say what he found within, then that would need the expert for. And we do have one exhibit that was presented to us, 791, which appears to be information that might have been reviewed or received from a cell phone that was recovered. And it seems to be a bunch of pictures of just the McStay family that did not properly be previously cleared with the court beforehand. I don't understand the relevance of any of this in this exhibit. And then how to change your identity in 2003. They have a page of that. I don't understand.
This is from whose phone?
The defendants. And it's 2013, not 2003.
I meant 13. That is correct.
Okay. Well, let's do the one witness first. I'm willing to at least start with the second witness. If they finish direct, I would not require you to start your cross-examination today. So you would have an opportunity to review that testimony with your expert before you begin cross-examination.
That's fair.
Okay? Okay. We'll let our court staff take a few minute recess.